Hey guys, this is Vol, and I would like to announce some news which some of you guys might find significant. That is that I'm beginning to start playing Warmachine Hordes, which is a tabletop strategy game developed by a company called Privateer Press. Now, as you know, I've been playing Warhammer Fantasy and some 40k over the last couple of years. Obviously, I've been well aware of Warmachine Hordes for some time, and obviously you guys have occasionally suggested I play it. You're not the only ones. Many of my friends in real life that I do a lot of gaming with have talked about that as well. And there have always been lots and lots of different reasons why I have stuck to Fantasy or tried 40k or not played Warmachine Hordes yet. And there are a lot of things that I do and don't like about, all those systems. So before we get too far into this video, I just want to say, first of all, if you check the links in the video description, there are 4 links that you're looking at. Sorry, there's only 3 links, rather. The first link is to my blog page, which I've had for a long time, but I haven't updated it in like a year or whatever it is. I've just made a new post now, which has a write-up in it, detailing why I've decided to get into Warmachine Hordes now, whereas I didn't in the past. I've also talked about some of the things I like about Warmachine Hordes and don't like about Warmachine Hordes, and same for Games Workshop games like Fantasy and 40k. And what I would like you guys to do is, if you are particularly interested in those things, go ahead and go over to that blog and read it. And if you desperately feel a need to make comments about that and just have your say, have the 50 cents out there, just comment on the blog page. I just want to keep all of that separate from the YouTube stuff, because really on my YouTube page, I just want to get straight into it. I want to start talking about the game, talking about the models and the lists and the game in general, rather than having this sort of comparison between the two systems. Secondly, there's a link to a thread that I started at the CityGuard forum, which is the forum for the gaming club that I go to, called CityGuard. That particular link will show off pictures of my models as I begin to paint them. I've got, at the time of recording this, I've got 3 different sort of model sets with photos taken of them. The first 2 were just experimentation models, which I won't be using as the basis for my color scheme for my new army. But I have nailed it with the 3rd lot. So if you want to look at that, if you want to sort of see how I'm going with the miniatures as I paint them, because the battle reports will be a while off, by the way, just keep looking at that thread if you want to see how I'm going with the visual side of it. Thirdly, many of you guys don't really know anything about Hordes and Warmachine, about the game, about the system, how to play it. And I must say, it's actually quite a simple system, but it's very complex once you delve into it and get going. But to get started with it, it's actually kind of easy to get your head around. So the 3rd link in the video description here will be to the Privateer Press website, where you can actually download a demo version of the rules. It's only 3 pages long, with the rules at least. You can read it, and that will give you a basic idea about the game. And if you do need to sort of refer to that when you're watching my battle reports, you're not already a player of Warmachine Hordes, that will help. And in fact, it's very easy to get a very small starter kit of guys if you want to play your own games and play. I must admit, when I first read those rules, I couldn't get my head around with it, because I didn't have any sort of real sort of games in front of me to actually refer to and sort of understand the rules. So it might be quite hard to get your head around the rules when you first read them, but they make a lot of sense once you play a couple of practice games. It's actually not that hard a game to get into, and especially if you're the kind of person that plays strategy games, especially tabletop games like Warhammer and 40k, you'll find that after several games of Warmachine Hordes, you get your head around it quite easily. You can see ways to win and ways to do well with it. So would encourage you guys to look into that. And yeah, just recently, Games Workshop, obviously having put out all these sort of dramatic removes they did, we all know about that. I did put up a video about that recently. Some of you guys may like to comment that Wayland Games at the moment, at the time of recording this video, have come out and said that they will be able to get around Games Workshop's embargo. They'll still be able to sell to Southern Hemisphere sort of customers at a discount. So some of you guys may like to say to me, well, why don't you just run with that, retract what you said earlier, and just keep going with Games Workshop? Well, my response to that would be, yes, I could do that, but really for me it was never about the money. I mean, I could easily just go down to my local store in town and continue to buy the models I want and start new armies and pay exorbitant prices for them. For me, it's a matter of principle. I don't really want to sort of continue to support that company so much if it has, made these very silly sort of moves, so to speak. If you guys go over to miniwargaming.com, I think those guys posted a recent video explaining, what Games Workshop had done and their views on it, and that was quite well talked about. So you might like to have a look into that one. But just for me in general, I don't really want to give any more money to Games Workshop at this time. I'm very excited about Hordes and Warmachine, and I'm more than happy to spend a lot of money with Privateer Press. And it also needs to be said that I will continue to play Warhammer, and I'll continue to play 40k, and I'll still upload battle reports of those two games over time, especially tournaments. So you guys won't miss out on too much of that, but obviously, yes, it'll be spread a little bit more thinner. I'll be putting out stuff for Warmachine as well, Warmachine and Hordes, as well as 40k and Fantasy. Right, so I feel like I've said pretty much enough about that, so hopefully you guys are up to speed and understanding all that so far. On to Warmachine and Hordes itself. It's very unwieldy title because really there are two games. There's Warmachine, which is one game, and there's Hordes, which is another game. They're both compatible with each other. It's almost like you're playing, I don't know, let's say you're playing Warhammer 40,000 and Games Workshop decides to lump, all of the Space Marine armies and Imperium armies together and lump them together and call them, Imperial armies. And let's say they lumped all of the other armies together and called them, say, Xenos armies. And they were separate games now, really separately with different rulebooks and different boxes, but you could still play a game of 40k which featured Space Marines against Tyrants, for example. That's about the best example I can think of, really. In Warmachine and Hordes, basically, if you play Hordes, you play one of the four Hordes factions. If you play Warmachine, you play one of the Warmachine factions, but you can still play your Warmachine army against a Hordes army. The only real difference in the two games is that the mechanics for controlling your units and so forth are slightly different. I mean, there's a slightly different play style there, but again, very much compatible. So I almost wish that there was a common term you could use. Some people call it like Warmer Hordes or something like that, or just Warmachine and just leave off the Hordes. But what we're talking about is one collective gaming system. The faction that I've chosen to go with is Circle of Orboros. For those of you familiar with Warhammer Fantasy, they're probably most similar to Wood Elves. I guess, Circle are to Hordes what Wood Elves are to Warhammer. They are very sort of tree-hugging, forest-dwelling type guys. They're very much about sort of guerrilla warfare, these sorts of tactics of sometimes avoidance, sometimes rushing out and getting the first strike, and so forth. But the reason I've chosen Circle is mainly because of the models. I've staved off getting into this game for quite a while because I didn't like the way that Warjacks looked. I didn't like the way that a lot of the factions and models looked. And when I went through each faction, I'd only sort of like a percentage of the models available. For example, looking at Crix, maybe 60 or 70% of the Crix models I liked. But with Circle, when I took a close look at the gallery a month or two ago, I realized it was more like 70 or 80% for Circle. And due to various choices you can make in your lists, you can actually put together a really strong list which doesn't feature any of the models you don't like. For example, I don't particularly like the Wolds. It's spelled W-O-L-D-S. They're these construct-type dudes. They're basically like stone golems that live in the forest with runes all over them. I didn't particularly like those models. I can see myself using one or two of them in a game down the track once it becomes sort of more reliant on just using all the options available. But at this point, I like the feral wolves and the druids and some of those guys, the living creatures. So that's what I've done. I've started to collect a Circle of Orboros army. Circle have access to a number of different casters you can use. In Warmachine and Hordes, you basically pick one special character. You have to have one special character, and he or she basically has a number of different abilities which work better with other units you can take in your list than others. With some than others, and so obviously choosing which caster you're going to play has a big impact, especially on your model collection. Now, there are some that I like. My favourites amongst the casters in terms of visual appearance and the abilities they have are Chromac. He's the Tharn Warlock who can transform into a beast. I like Mosar, who's the desert-walking sort of druid guy who has a lot of sort of ranged sort of magic controlling abilities. And I like Epic Kruger, In Warmachine Hordes, basically, you've got a character, but you might also have the same special character with some different rules, and the background behind him has progressed. You need to have a bit of a read up about that if you want to find out a bit more and understand it, but just take my word for it that you can basically have a prime version of the caster and an epic version of the character. So Kruger might make it in. I'm actually planning on using I think the Raven Priest or Raven Druid miniature from Studio McVeigh, which I think is just a beautiful model. So I'm really looking forward to having that as a stand-in counts as model for Kruger. Kaya comes with the starter kit for Circle, which I have purchased. I know it's not a very good package overall, but the reason I bought it is because at the moment Privateer Press have got a bundle going where you can get that starter package with the rulebook as well. It'll come with a Feral Warp Wolf, which I'll obviously use in a lot of my lists, and when I want to play somebody else's starter kit, battle box type thing, I can just use Kaya and her setup since the battle boxes are relatively balanced against each other. So really looking forward to it. I've played a number of months ago last year, I played a demo day at the club where I played lots of BattleBox practice games, and that sort of got me into an understanding of it, but I didn't pick up the hobby. A couple of weeks ago I did start with the hobby, and since then, over those last couple of weeks I've played about 10 games. Small games, look around about 15, 25 points. I've really been enjoying it, and I've been picking up the rules and ideas behind it very quickly. I've been reading, the stats and books of the other factions, reading a lot of forums and battle reports, and my understanding of it's, going through quite a rapid growth curve. So yeah, check out my models on the thread. I will be starting to do some battle reports only once I have painted up a suitable army and once I have developed an understanding of the game that allows me to play in a fairly competent and confident way in order to deliver some really good quality games to you guys. But really looking forward to it. I think this is a good move for me, and I'm hoping to get involved in the local Warmachine and Hordes community, which feels like it's not what it could be at the moment. It's a little bit fractured. There are not a lot of local events, but hopefully I'll be able to use some of my influence and sort of my contacts and presence on the forums to contribute to that, and hopefully we'll see some really good stuff over the next year. Anyway, thanks guys. I hope you enjoyed this piece of news, and I hope you continue to look at the stuff that I post and my battle reports coming up. And in the coming weeks, I've got this weekend I've got Can Opener, which is an event I'm going to, a small charity based event which will have very low level points values, but it'll be for Warhammer Fantasy and Warmachine and Hordes. I may enter any of those three, so it's going to be a surprise up until the day. And there'll be 10 Soldiers, which is a 2,400 point Warhammer Fantasy Battles event next month, and I'll be covering that as well, most likely with my Skaven, but possibly Chaos or Empire or a Borrowed Army instead. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, guys. If you really feel the need to post comments on my videos, obviously there's nothing stopping you except me deleting your comments, but I would prefer to keep, discussion on this video more about Privateer Press, about Warmachine and Hordes, about, Circle of Ouroboros, the casters and the abilities. I'd love to hear from you if you're a local player in Auckland or New Zealand. If you want to sort of talk to me about events going on, happy to, always looking for games. And if you've got comments about my colour scheme for my models, by all means, go ahead. And if you've got advice which you'd like to share with other YouTube viewers about the game and how to get into it and what you can do, feel free to comment. One thing I don't really want to hear about is, oh, no, you're not going to do as much fantasy, or now you're not going to cover my favourite game, or I really want you to do this, I want you to do that. Those sorts of comments will get deleted, as you guys know. But thanks for all of that. See you later. This is Vol.